I'm not the victim of the world I see. Hello, thank you all so much for joining me. I'm Willie from the Ozarks, and we're ready for Lesson 31 in A Course in Miracles Workbook for Students. We're reading from the original edition here on the 31st of January, 2023. I am not a victim of the world I see. I am not a victim of the world I see. Starts off by saying, and thank you all so much for joining me. God is in everything, or excuse me, wrong page turned here. I am not the victim of the world I see. I am not the victim of the world I see. Today's idea is the introduction to your declaration of release. Today is the introduction to your declaration of release. Today, I'm not the victim of the world I see. Again, the idea should be applied to both the world you see without and the world you see within. In applying the idea, we will use a form of practice which will be used more and more, with changes as indicated. Generally speaking, the form includes two aspects. One in which you apply the idea on a more sustained basis, and the other consisting of frequent applications of the idea throughout the day. Two longer practice periods with the idea for today are needed. That's the two more sustained periods. One in the morning and one at night. 3 to 5 minutes for each of them are recommended. 3 to 5 minutes are recommended morning and night. During that time, look about you slowly while repeating the idea 2 or 3 times. Then close your eyes and apply the same idea to your inner world. You will escape from both together, for the inner is the cause of the outer. As you survey your inner world, merely let whatever thoughts cross your mind come into your awareness, each to be considered for a moment, and then replaced by the next. Try not to establish any thought of hierarchy among them. Watch them come and go as dispassionately as possible. Do not dwell on any one in particular, but try to let the stream move on evenly and calmly, without any special investment on your part. As you sit and quietly watch your thoughts, repeat today's idea to yourself as often as you care to, but with no sense of hurry. I am not the victim of the world I see, is what you'll say to yourself as you're watching your thoughts go by. Just in the same way you'd look at thing to thing in the world around you, which he says to start with that, but then close your eyes after you've looked at, said it a couple, 3 times, then close your eyes and do the same thing with your thoughts as they go by. Look at them and say, I'm not the victim of the world I see. In addition, repeat the idea for today as often as possible during the day. And that'll be your shorter ones that are not sustained, more repetitious. Where are we at? As you sit quietly and watch your thoughts, repeat today's idea to yourself as often as you care to, but with no sense of hurry. In addition, repeat the idea for today as often as possible during the day. Remind yourself that you're making a declaration of independence in the name of your own freedom. And in your freedom lies the freedom of the world. The idea for today is a particularly useful one to use as a response to any form of temptation. It is a declaration that you will not yield to it and put yourself in bondage. Okay. I am not the victim of the world I see. I am not the victim. I am not the victim of the world I see. I'm not the victim of the world I see. Okay, we'll come back to that in a little bit. Let's go take a look in our text reading, and we're ready for, in Chapter 4, The Root of All Evil, Section 5, The Escape from Fear. And before we pick up on it and read, let me tell you about another I want to tell you about a beefsteak tomato, and reading to you from the Baker's Creek Heirloom Seed Catalog, Classic Beefsteak. The classic beefsteak tomato of yesteryear is back. Massive fruit, easily reaching 1 to 2 pounds, has deep red flesh and good old-fashioned tomato flavor. These are the meaty, firm tomatoes that Grandma grew. This variety produces particularly well in the Northeast, but is also well adapted to the entire U.S. Scientists recently determined that beefsteak's massive fruit was originally caused by a chance mutation. This happy accident created a much larger tomato. Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortez brought samples of a larger flattened tomato back to Europe. From this seed was developed many larger tomatoes we know today. And it's an indeterminate, the vining type, that'll produce all year long. And it'll need staked and trellised. Its genus and species is a Solanum or Solanum lycopeisicum, I think. Anyway, that's from Baker's Creek. All right, let's take a look at the escape from fear. If you cannot hear the voice of God, it is because you do not choose to listen. If you do not hear the voice of God, why? It is because you don't choose to listen. In fact, that you do listen to the voice of your ego is demonstrated by your attitudes, your feelings, and your behavior. That's why I always encourage people to look at your feelings. If you're not happy, ask for what unforgiveness you're holding and let it go. Your attitudes are obviously conflicted. Your feelings have a narrow range on the negative side, but are never purely joyous. And your behavior is either strained or unpredictable. Yet this is what you want. This is what you are fighting to keep and what you are vigilant to save. Your minds are filled with schemes to save the face of your egos, and you do not seek the face of Christ. The glass in which the ego seeks to see its face is dark indeed. And that dark glass, I expect that's a reference to that love chapter in 1 Corinthians 13, where it says we look through a glass darkly, but then face to face, we'll eventually know. Right now we're looking kind of darkly through the ego's all kinds of twisted thoughts. But the main thing is be aware of your feelings, and if you're not feeling joyous, you need to ask for help. That's the main thing we can realize. You might be confused a little bit because we're looking through the glass darkly. How can it maintain the trick of its existence except with mirrors? The ego. But where you look to find yourself is up to you. We have said that you cannot change your mind by changing your behavior. But we have also said, and many times before, that you can change your mind. When your mood tells you that you have chosen wrongly, when your mood tells you you're kind of in a depressed or upset mood, be aware of it. And let that be the warning light on your dash come on, the red light blinking, saying, when your mood tells you that you have chosen wrongly, this is so whenever you are not joyous. Then know, this need not be. If you're not joyous, it need not be, because part of the kingdom of heaven is you're always joyful. In every case you have thought wrongly about some soul that God created and are perceiving images your ego makes in a darkened glass. Think honestly what you have thought that God would not have thought, and what you have not thought that God would have you think. Search sincerely for what you have done and left undone accordingly, and then change your minds to think with God's or to think with love's. It'll always be guiltlessness and love that'll be what you want to side with in order to remove the pain of the depression, the anger, the guilt, anything that's not joyful. This may seem hard to you, but it is much easier than trying to think against it. Your mind is one with God's. Denying this and thinking otherwise has held your ego together, but has literally split your mind. As a loving brother, I am deeply concerned with your mind and urge you to follow my example as you look at yourselves and at each other and see in both the glorious creations of a glorious Father. And, I want to just briefly say that I just feel like I want to be a good example of a student. That's what I meant yesterday, that I'm not really a teacher. Jesus is the teacher, because he's the one that lifts me up and holds me and shows me. And yet he wants me to stand on my own. And when I get there, I'll let you know. But at this point, I'm still seeing through the glass darkly and don't really think I should be. Yes, I am a teacher and I need to accept that. You're a teacher and need to accept that. We're teaching all the time. But I'm trying to be a good example of a good student in these lessons, so that you can be inspired. If I can make it, you can make it, believe me. Paragraph 59. When you are sad, know that this need not be. When you are sad, know that this need not be. Depression always arises ultimately from a sense of being deprived of something you want and do not have. Depression always arises ultimately from a sense of being deprived of something you want and do not have. Know you are deprived of nothing except by your own decisions, and then decide otherwise. We're just a decision away from happiness or joy. When you are anxious, know that all anxiety comes from the capriciousness of the ego, and need not be. The capriciousness of the ego, and it need not be. You can be as vigilant against the ego's dictates as for them. Physics 61. When you feel guilty, know that the ego has indeed violated the laws of God, but you have not. Leave the sins of the ego to me. That is what atonement is for. But until you change your mind about those your ego has hurt, the atonement cannot release you. As long as you feel guilty, your ego is in command, because only the ego can experience guilt, and this need not be. And when I was mentioning something about yesterday, in paragraph 54 yesterday, I said profoundly unafraid. And it's supposed to be exactly the opposite. When it said, this is the one fact that means the ego does not exist, and which therefore makes it profoundly afraid, is what I should have said under. And that was basically saying God has given you everything. This is the one fact that means the ego does not exist, and which therefore makes it profoundly afraid. I just felt like I needed to clear that up. And words like capriciousness and stuff, be sure to look those words up if you don't really know what they mean. Mark them and then go back and look them up and maybe write it in your book. And we're ready for 62. Watch your mind for the temptations of the ego and do not be deceived by it. Know it offers you nothing. When you have given up this voluntary dispiriting, you will see how your mind can focus and rise above fatigue and heal. Yet you are not sufficiently vigilant against the demands of the ego to disengage yourself. But this need not be. That's what we're learning, disengage from the ego, so we're not seeing through a dark glass. We can see, we can know again. 63. The habit of engaging with God and His creations is easily made if you actively refuse to let your mind slip away. The problem is not one of concentration. It is the belief that no one, including yourself, is worth consistent effort. Wow. The problem is not one of concentration. It is the belief that no one, including yourself, is worth consistent effort. Wow, we set learning limits for yourself or others. Don't do that. Jesus didn't do it for us, and we don't want to do it for ourselves or others. The problem is not one of concentration. It is the belief that no one, including yourself, is worth consistent effort. So you see no reason to concentrate. You're not motivated. You've set your learning limit. Side with me consistently against this deception, and do not permit this shabby belief to pull you back. The disheartened are useless to themselves and to me, but only the ego can be disheartened. Have you really considered how many opportunities you have had to gladden yourself and how many of them you have refused? Think about that. Have you really considered how many opportunities you have had to choose joy, or to, as he says, gladden yourselves? And how many of them you have refused? I just decide not to be joyful. I'm going to stay depressed. And yet the opportunity is a thought away to change your mind. There is no limit to the power of the Son of God, but he himself can limit the expression of his power as much as he chooses. 64. Your mind and mine can unite in shining your ego away and releasing the strength of God into everything you think and will and do. Read that a sentence again. Your mind and mine can unite in shining your ego away and releasing the strength of God into everything you think and will and do. Do not settle for anything less than this and refuse to accept anything but this as your goal. Wow. Watch your minds carefully for any beliefs that hinder its accomplishment and step away from them. Judge how well you have done this by your own feelings, for this is the one right use of judgment. Check your feelings and see, am I feeling like I'm in the kingdom of heaven? Am I feeling joyful? Or am I depressed or upset? Well, this need not be, tell yourself. Judgment, like any other defense, can be used to attack or protect, to hurt or to heal. The ego should be brought to your judgment and found wanting there. Without your own allegiance, protection, and love, it cannot exist. Judge your ego truly, and you must withdraw allegiance, protection, and love from it. 65. You are mirrors of truth in which God himself shines in perfect light. To the ego's dark glass, you need but say, I will not look there because I know these images are not true. Then let the Holy One shine on you in peace. Listen to that. Say, you are mirrors of truth in which God himself shines in perfect light. The ego's dark glass, you need but say, or to the ego's dark glass, you need but say, I will not look there because I know these images are not true. Then let the Holy One shine on you in peace, knowing that this and only this must be. His mind shone on you in your creation and brought your mind into being. His mind still shines on you and must shine through you. Your ego cannot prevent him from shining on you, but it can prevent you from letting him shine through you. The first coming of Christ is just another name for the creation. For Christ is the Son of God. This is paragraph 66. The first coming of Christ is just another name for the creation. For Christ is the Son of God. The second coming of Christ means nothing more than the end of the ego's rule over part of the minds of men and the healing of the mind. Wow, there's the first and second coming of Christ. The first coming of Christ is just another name for the creation. For Christ is the Son of God. The second coming of Christ means nothing more than the end of the ego's rule over part of the minds of men and the healing of the mind. I was created like you in the first, and I have called you to join with me in the second. Wow, isn't that great? The second coming, Christ is calling us to join with him. As we were created, so are we now. Joyful forever. And use your feelings to tell you how to navigate. Do you need to ask Christ for help to follow him? Well, use your feelings to know when you need to cry out for help from the Holy One. If you will think over your lives, you will see how carefully the preparations were made. I am in charge of the second coming, and my judgment, which is used only for protection, cannot be wrong because it never attacks. Yours is so distorted that you believe I was mistaken in choosing you. I assure you this is a mistake of your egos. Do not mistake it for humility. Wow. 67. Do not mistake it for humility. Look and see how God's leading you and guiding you. It'll be true. You'll be able to see. Your egos are trying to convince you that they are real and I am not. Because if I am real, I am no more real than you are. That knowledge, and I assure you that it is knowledge, means that Christ must come into your minds and heal them. Although I am not attacking your egos, I am working with your higher minds, whether you are asleep or awake, just as your ego does with your lower mind. I am your vigilance in this, because you are too confused to recognize your own hope. I was not mistaken. Your minds will elect to join with mine, and together we are invincible. And the last paragraph, 68, you will yet come together in my name, and your sanity will be restored. I raised the dead by knowing that life is an eternal attribute of everything that the living God created. Wow, he tells you how he rose the dead. I raised the dead by knowing that life is an eternal attribute of everything that the living God created. Why do you believe it is harder for me to inspire the dispirited or to stabilize the unstable? I do not believe that there is an order of difficulty in miracles. You do. I have called and you will answer. I know that miracles are natural because they are expressions of love. My calling you is as natural as your answer, and as inevitable. Okay, wow. Well, now you all know what to do. We're going to take our the 2 longer practice periods for today are needed, each to last 3 to 5 minutes. And then during that time, look about you slowly while repeating the idea 2 or 3 times. I am not the victim of the world I see. Then close your eyes and apply the same idea to your inner world. You will escape from both together, for the inner is the cause of the outer. And as you survey the inner world, merely let whatever thoughts cross your mind come into your awareness, each to be considered for a moment and then replaced by the next. Try not to establish any thought hierarchy among them. Watch them come and go as dispassionately as possible. Do not dwell on any one in particular, but try to let the stream move on evenly and calmly without any special investment on your part. As you sit and quietly watch your thoughts, repeat today's idea to yourself as often as you care to, but with no sense of hurry. And then remember to, throughout the day, every hour, or every, several times, try it every hour, but as often as you want, repeat the idea. Remind yourself that you're making a declaration of independence in the name of your own freedom. In the name of your own freedom, you're making a declaration of independence. Isn't that something? I'm not the victim of the world I see. You can do that meditation right now as I'm singing. I'm not the victim of the world I see. I'm not the victim of the world I see. I'm not the victim of the world I see. So close your eyes and apply the idea to your inner world. You will escape both together, for the inner is the cause of the outer. I am not the victim of the world I see. I'm not the victim of the world I see. I'm not the victim of the world I see. Remind yourself that you are making a declaration of independence in the name of your freedom, in the name of your own freedom. I'm not the victim of the world I see. I'm not the victim of the world I see. I'm not the victim of the world I see. Close your eyes and apply the idea to your inner world. You will escape both together, for the inner is the cause of the outer. I am not the victim of the world I see. I'm not the victim of the world I see. Remind yourself that you are making a declaration of independence in the name of your own freedom. In the name of your own freedom. I'm not the victim of the world I see. I'm not the victim of the world I see. I'm not the victim of the world I see. So try to think about that throughout the day. I'm not the victim of the world I see. Thank you. Peace.